I'm going to walk into my trigger, switching to first person camera. After 5 seconds, I should take a 10-second transition into first person, which is exactly what we told it to do. So one thing that we need to know about the camera API right out the gate before we even get started, the camera APIs require, or manipulating the local camera, I should say, requires a local script. So it has to be owned by the player in order to manipulate that player's camera, which kind of dictates a couple of things right out the gate before we even get started. It means that we're going to need a server script, and it means that we're going to need a local script. So at a minimum, probably going to have 2 scripts here in order to make this work. So let's think this out just a little bit before we get started. And I did a little bit of thinking ahead of time, and I'm imagining a series of triggers in our world, and our avatar is just going to walk into these triggers in order to switch to the different camera modes. Now, this may not be exactly what you would set up in your world, but I think it's going to give us a good base for doing what manipulating cameras in your world, essentially. So let me just start with a trigger, right? I don't have anything pre-made, completely empty world here, so we're going to do this on the fly. So I'm going to drop our first trigger here. And knowing that I'm going to have multiple triggers and manipulate different camera modes, I don't want a script for each trigger. I may do a central script that maybe listens to each trigger, although that's going to be about 6 or 8 different triggers, which is fine. But let's start with like the first person camera. It's probably the simplest. I don't actually know it's the simplest, but in my mind, it's the most common anyway. Let me grab a text gizmo. I'm going to try to drop it on top of this trigger. And I'm just going to put in first person. And we need to flip it 180 degrees so it turns around and faces our spawn point. All right, good. Now, I'm going to also bring in an empty object. And I'm going to name this empty object. Actually, I'm just going to be vague here and just call it server, because I'll also create a script that I'm going to call server as well. And so we're going to leave this script default. And I name it server because it's just running on the server. I probably want to be a little more descriptive in your particular use case, but this is what we'll go with for now. Maybe I'll change it later as we go. And let's just start with this. So let's go ahead and take a look at our script here. And so if I'm thinking out loud, I know I'm going to want my server script to have a reference to this trigger. So I'm going to call it first person trigger. And we're going to give it a type of just entity. And there's going to be others here as well. So, but we'll start with this one. Probably going to need some events. I think we're going to be sending events to the player's camera anyway. Let's create another script. And so this script, I'm going to call player camera. And this is going to be our local script. So I need to go ahead and change the execution mode of this script to local. Now, there's a couple of ways I could approach this, and I think I'm going to take the opportunity to introduce a rather new gizmo to you guys here as well, called the asset pool gizmo. The gizmo actually saves us a little bit of work in that if I pull out, I'll just go ahead and show you guys. We'll go ahead and pull it out now. I'm going to do several things at once here, so stay with me. So the asset pull gizmo looks like just another trigger, and that's fine. I really don't need it anywhere in the world, so we could drag it below the floor or whatever we want to do to keep it out of our way later. There's a couple of behavior properties that we can set for this. There's the auto assign to players, which we will be using, and then there's the asset reference. The reason I like using the asset pull gizmo is it handles the transferring of ownership to a player for us automatically. So I don't even have to worry about that. So it does a little bit of the heavy lifting for us, and we're going to utilize that in our session today. Which means I'm going to need to create an asset that represents our camera, our player camera. And to do that, I'm just going to grab another empty object. I'm going to call this empty object player camera. And I'm going to attach our player camera script to it. I actually don't need it to be animated. So when I attach the script, it becomes animated automatically. I'm going to remove that because it's not necessary. And that's pretty much it. I can now right click this and create an asset out of it. And I'm just going to drop it in my base, just one of my folders here. So now that I've attached the script, I can reference that asset in my asset pull gizmo. It's the very top one here, so I'll go ahead and select that. When I do that, we're going to notice in the world, I'm currently allowing 8 players maximum. So the asset pull gizmo is going to create 8 instances of my player camera asset that I gave it a reference to. And then we have mines here still that I created. And so it'll go ahead and create all 8 of those for us. So now we need to write some scripts to get it to work. So let me go ahead and pull up. I always make a point to open folder when I'm working. And so typically, if you hit the open folder button under the Explorer icon, it'll navigate you to the folder of the world that you're currently editing. So all I got to do here is select folder, and then I'll find everything will refresh, but I'll find all of my scripts are now available here and a hierarchy for me, which is convenient for multiple reasons. We won't get into all of the reasons, but now I've got access to both my player camera script and my server script right here together. So let's start with, we really don't matter which one we start with. We'll start with the server script. So anytime I'm connecting to an event, if I can at all, I try to do it in a pre-start method, which is a method that runs before any other object's start method or any other script start method runs. So it makes sure it's a good place to make sure we're connected to all of the events that we want to listen to in case any of those fire at world start. The pre-start will ensure that we're ready to hear those events. I already know right out the gate, I'm going to need to connect to each one of our triggers. Before I can reference a trigger, though, I got to make sure it has a value. So we'll wrap it in an if statement. So if props dot first person trigger. Now I can watch this as Drew here. I started using this shortcut, Alt arrow, allow you to move a line up and down without copy and pasting. Anyway, connecting to a code block event for this dot props dot first person trigger is our target that we're going to be listening to in this particular case. The event we want to hear is going to be a code block event. It's not. It's code block events dot on player enter trigger is the one we want to hear. And then it gives us a reference to player. And without giving it too much thought, like I could probably definitely write the code in a much more elegant way if I had more time to think about it. But like I said, we're doing this on the fly, so we're just going to create a first person method that accepts our player as a parameter. And so I need to go down here and create that method. Copilot's got my back. First person method accepts a player as a parameter. And here I know we're going to be sending an event to said player. But before we can send any events, we need to create that event for one. But we also need to be able to handle the event over here on our player script. So player enters the trigger for the first person, and then we're going to send an event to the player. I don't have to do any transferring of ownership just yet. Our asset gizmo is going to handle that for us, so it saves us some code. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the player camera now. So when ownership is transferred on a local script, it will rerun the pre-start and the start methods for that script. So I can kind of use that to my advantage here. We'll be connecting to the event that we're going to have to actually create now. And I'm going to go ahead and create the event in this way by I'll export a constant outside of our class here called camera events. And I know I need a first person camera event. So we'll just call it first person. We'll say new.hz. Now, when when communicating between a server script and a local script, we have to use a network event in order to do that communication. And I won't be accepting any parameters. I think I can omit this part, but I'm just going to leave it empty. Open parentheses. Now I'll name this first person. It's the name of the event. And I think that is all I have to do to define my network event here, which means now I can go back to my server script and I can import those camera events. Import camera events from player camera. Perfect. All right, so now anywhere in this script, like down here when the first person method fires, I can say this dot send network event. The target is going to be our player. The event we're going to send is camera events dot first person. Am I missing data? Is that what it's complaining about? Expected. I don't know. There it goes. Okay, yeah, just an empty object for our parameters because we don't actually need to send any parameters in this case. All right, let's save that. Let's go back to our player script here. All right, so we've got our event set up and we've got our server script sending said event after it imported the event. Now we can connect to the event, but before we can connect to the event, because we're going to be connecting to the player, but when the world first starts, I don't actually have a reference to the player, not until ownership is transferred. So the first thing I'm going to want to do here is just make sure that, first of all, I have an owner that's not the server player. So I can write an if statement here in my pre-start and say, if, actually, I think before I do that, so I don't have to get the owner twice, I'm going to create a private variable here called owner. And then I'm going to set the owner to, and Copilot's wrong here, so we'll delete its suggestion. So this dot owner is going to be equal to this dot world dot get server player. And so this will return Actually, no, my bad. It's this dot entity dot owner dot get. And so this will return the owner of this particular instance of the camera player. The owner in this at this point could be the server player, or it could be a real player. We don't actually know, but we're going to find out, because the next thing we do is check to see if this dot owner is equal to this dot world dot get server player. So if that ends up being true, and our owner is the server player, we're just going to do a return, which basically means we're going to exit this function, and nothing else after that return will be executed. If that is false and we don't return, anything below here will be executed, and so we'll need to connect. I think Copilot's accurate here. I don't think data is needed because we don't have any data. But yeah, so we're connecting to a network event. The target is our owner because we've determined now that it's not the server player, so it's a real player. And the event we're connecting to is the first person event. But now we need to do a thing. And actually, I'm going to rewrite this a little bit. So I'm going to create a method just called first person again. And instead of executing the code here, we're going to call that method instead this dot first person, no parameters this time, because we know who the person is. It's going to be the owner. Now, in order to manipulate their camera, we're going to need to import local camera. So we'll say import, I think I can just say local camera. If I hit tab, Copilot kind of fills in the rest for me. So all we're going to do is import local camera from the Horizon/camera API. And so now this will actually give us access to manipulating the camera for this player. Down here in our first person method, I can say local camera dot, and now I've got several options here. If I scroll down through here and take a look, I see a bunch of set camera modes. And one of them in particular I'm looking for is first person. I believe first person probably accepts some optional parameters. So if we hover over this method, we can see there are some options, and the question mark lets us know that it's optional. Also, if we read down through here, we'll see the options parameter is an optional camera transition option. So we could take a look at what's available for us to manipulate in the camera transition options. Let's go ahead and do that. I like to set a const and just call it options and set it equal to, what was it called again? Camera transition options. Actually, I'll annotate it with a type, camera transition options. And then I'll set it equal to, the reason I like to do it like this is because now I can hover my mouse over camera transition options and I can see what the options are. There's an optional delay, an optional duration for the transition time, and then an optional easing. If we scroll down, we can kind of see what each of these options kind of do. So delay is in seconds. It's how long we wait until the transition begins. Default is 0. The duration is the time in seconds to transition from the previous camera to the new camera. If it's not set, the transition is instant. And easing is the style in which the transition from the previous to the new camera occurs over time. Default is linear. Be perfectly honest with you, I'm not terribly familiar with the different easing options and how they affect it. But now I can set any of those options. So if I want to set a delay, so maybe I I delay it by 5 seconds before I transition into the first person camera. I could do a comma and I can set a duration. So maybe I take 10 seconds to transition between whatever my existing camera was and my new camera. And these are we're just playing around at this point just to kind of see these things in action. And now Copilot automatically wants to suggest options as a parameter in our set camera first person mode. And so we're going to accept that. And now we're pretty much done here. Yeah, I may be forgetting something. That's what happens when you do things live. But I believe we might be finished. And so I think we might be good to go. If not, we'll figure it out here in just a second when we do it live. So let's get this out of our way. Our trigger, we need to connect. Yeah, we do need to reference. So our server needs the server script attached to it. Now we have an empty property for our first person trigger, which I need to rename this to first person trigger so I can tell the difference between my triggers in a hierarchy when I start adding more later. But now when I select my server, I can drag down my first person trigger. Oops, I went off screen. Try it again. All right, now we're linked up. When I play the world, I should automatically get ownership of one of these player cameras thanks to our asset pool gizmo. And when I walk into the trigger, I should be first person. But, okay, so I'm going to be third person by default according to the spawn gizmo, which is good. All right, so let's test this out and see if it works. Hit play, jump into the world. I'm in third person. I'm going to walk into my trigger. Switching to first person camera, after 5 seconds, I should take a 10-second transition into first person, which is exactly what we told it to do, which tells me that it works. So now we can take our base code that we've created and we can start to set up other camera modes quite easily at this point. That's really the gist of it, right? So using the asset gizmo, the asset pool gizmo, and 2 scripts, I was able to very quickly start manipulating the player's camera. The only exception is making sure one of the camera that's hosting the local camera is a local script. That's it. So let's go ahead and play around with some of these other camera modes, right? So let's grab this trigger and let's grab this gizmo, text gizmo. I'm going to do a Control D to duplicate that, drag it over here. And so the next one, you know, probably third person. Is that center? That's good enough. And you don't need a script, but we do need to give it a title, third person. And inside of our server script, if we go back to that, we're going to need to set up a reference. So we can now say third person camera. Copilot knows what to do. Set it the same way we set the first person camera. Same, we need to connect now to this dot. Actually connect, yeah, this dot connect to code block event. I'm going to switch up my if statement a little bit, and we're going to use an inline if statement because I'm going to have to do this several times. And I think Copilot is catching on. So if my third person camera prop now has a value, we're going to connect to a code block event. Third person camera is the target. On trigger enter is the event. And third person is the method that we're going to fire. So I need to create third person method. Copilot's got my back again here. So third person is the name of the method with a player parameter. We're still sending the network event to the player, but third person is not an existing event yet, but that's all right. We're going to fix that right now. So now I can go to my camera, and I think I need a comma here. Yeah, now I create a new event for third person, and I'm going to connect to that event just like I did on first person, and I need to create a method for it just like I did with first person as well. Copilot is already kind of knows he knows what the deal is, right? So let's take a look at setting third person. And again, all it comes with is camera transition options. And it just used the same options that I had before. So exact same behavior I expect to happen here. I believe we're ready to go. And so this is a good example of like Copilot, speeding things up for us. We were able to essentially use the same patterns as before to really quickly set up a third person camera. Let's test and make sure this works as well. So we're already in third person, so I probably should have removed that delay, so I ain't got to wait 5 seconds. But let's see, when it starts to transition, before we even fully get there, like I'm going to jump into this trigger now. Yeah, I don't think our 5 seconds was before. And actually, I didn't get the event. So I did forget stuff this time around. Our server does not have a reference to our third person trigger. So nothing got triggered when I walked into it. Let's go back and change our code just a little bit. So we're going to shorten that duration down to 1 second. And the transition time, we can make like 3 seconds. Just to see that it's still doing its thing, right? All right, let that compile. Should get 2 more. I think that's it. All right, we'll restart the world. I'll hit play. All right, after 1 second, we're going into first person within 3 seconds. And then I'm going to step into that trigger and we're going to come back out again. Pretty straightforward. Now, I'm afraid we may not have time. I think we actually did that second camera in 5 minutes though. But let's look at one of our other cameras. And so I'm in the player script, and I'm going to make a copy of this method because what I really want to do is take a look at some of the other camera options that we have. I don't know them off the top of my head, but if we do local camera dot, we get this nice little menu that kind of shows them to us, right? So we've got an attach, so we can attach our camera to a thing. And this is actually fun. We're going to use this one first. Now, if we hover over set camera mode attach, we actually see there's an extra parameter this time along with our options, but now there's a new option, attach camera option, in conjunction with our camera transition options that we had before. So now we've got some new toys to play with. So target is an important one because we need to tell it what to attach the camera to, which probably needs to come over as a parameter in our network event. Attach person, I guess, can be the name of our function. Let's go ahead and create our attach person camera, our attach person network event, I should say. But I'm going to need a parameter. So target as an entity will be our parameter for this particular event. So now when I'm connecting to the event, I do have some data to send to our method, which means I need to set our method up to receive this data. So we'll just, again, target as an entity, and that satisfies this squiggly line that appeared here. So now I have a target that I can attach the camera to, and I'll just use the target parameter as our parameter for our method to attach the camera. I don't actually have to set any options. I can leave that blank. Or let's take a look at what the attached camera options actually are. So I'm going to call this attach options. and set it to, what was the name of that again? I need, okay, just accept that for a second because I need this pop up. Attach camera options. I literally just said it. I didn't know it. I just wanted to make sure. So attach camera options, and then now we can see what the attached camera options are just by hovering over this. So we have a position offset as a vector. We have a rotation offset as a vector, a translation speed, and a rotation speed. So let's read into these a little bit. We kind of already have an idea of what the position offset and rotation offset is going to be. So it's just going to be a position relative to the target and a rotation relative to the target for the camera to rest at. I'm not actually going to use one of those. But a translation speed, I'm kind of curious, controls how quickly the camera moves with the target it's attached to. Okay, so if my target moves, does my camera lag behind, or does it snap to it instantly? We can take a look at how that affects the player or affects our perspective. And the rotation speed is how quickly the camera rotates to keep the target in view. Let's actually play with both of those. So let's say translation speed, I'm going to set that to just a 1 for now. And our rotation speed, I'll set to a 1 as well. Notice that I need to wrap these in curly braces. And then I can reference it here. I think if I wanted to include transition options, yeah, I can say and options. No, can I not? Is that not what that says? Did I do it wrong? I ain't got, oh, that just wants 2 ands, I guess. No copilot, not a comma. That should work. We'll go with it, see what happens. All right. So this side is set up. We have a reference to our target. Target's coming from our connected network event. Let's save this script. Let's go back to our server because we need to set up this side now. So let's go ahead and create the attach person camera reference for our trigger. Let's connect to that event. So let's make sure Copilot gave us the right suggestion. Checking our if statement, checking our target, checking our event, and attach person is our method. We're going to have another parameter. That's okay. We don't have to do it there. We can do it down here. So let's create the attach person method. We're sending an event to the player again, just like we did before. And then we're setting a target, but there's a squiggly line here. That's because, well, target's an entity for one, so target can't be a player. So we're going to have to replace player with something else. Let's go ahead and create a new property for whatever we want to attach this camera to. And so I'll call this, I'm just going to call this attach object. I'm using very terrible naming, I think. But so we'll create an object and we'll set the reference for this. So we can say, we got to check to see if object exists first. So we'll say if this dot props dot attach object. Now we can reference attach object as our target and our target parameter here. I think we may be finished with the script side of things. Like I said, if we forgot something, we'll figure it out here in just a minute. Let's go ahead and set ourselves up with our new trigger. Let's call this attach camera. Let's call this the attach trigger. And I need to create the object that we're going to attach to. And this is my favorite part. I'm going to grab a shape. I'm going to grab a sphere. I'm just going to drop it right here. I'm going to make this sphere grabbable. Actually, oops, wrong button. I'm going to scale this down just a little bit so he's not so big. But he's grabbable, and I want him to have grabbable with physics. All right, and let's go to our server. And we need to set a reference to our attach trigger. And I'm going to rename this sphere to, I'm just going to call it ball, whatever. And I'm going to link our reference to the ball as well. So if I haven't forgotten everything, when we walk into attach trigger, it should attach our camera to this ball. And then I should basically be able to pick my head up because it's the ball. It's attached to the ball, and I should be able to throw my head. So let's see if it works. Let's see if I've forgotten anything. All right, grabbability is there. Switching to attach camera. All right, so my camera is attached to the ball. Now if I can bring my avatar over here, I can hit E to pick up this ball. Now I'm in my hand, right? Now I can hit Q, rear it back, and throw the ball. I'm sorry, I think that's really fun. Anyway, so that worked. We didn't forget anything, and we've effectively set up an attach camera now. Let's see what other camera modes we have to play with. We still got more time here. So let's copy our last method, bring it down here. I'm just going to satisfy this error for a second because I want to be able to do local camera dot. So I can look at these other. So fixed, which fixed will allow us, if we look at fixed, sets the current camera to a fixed position and rotation. I would have thought that the position wouldn't have been optional. But maybe if we don't set it, and let's read, move the camera to a new position over a period of 1 second, maintaining its current orientation. Oh, the options. If not set, camera remains fixed in place from its current position and orientation. So that's why it's optional then. I would have thought position would have been a required parameter for this camera mode, but they decided if it's not set, then it'll just be whatever position it was currently in at that moment when it was told to set the camera mode. Let's look at some of the other options. Maybe we want to do something different. Or if anyone camera roll with options, I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you. Third person's pan. Pan's a really good one if you want that side or top down view. So that's really cool. We could probably look at that one. I'd like to see a Oh, you're right. We didn't play with those options, did we? Let's comment out this error so we can worry about that later. Translation speed. Let's increase that translation speed. Let's make it quite a bit bigger, right? Let's set just the translation speed to 10 and see what that looks like. 2 more. Or not? I guess not. All right. I'm going to walk around to the back side of this and pick it up from this direction. All right. Pick it up. Now let's throw it. Oh my goodness. So it's actually, I think it's actually kind of hard to tell because we couldn't see the ball that we were supposed to be following behind. I think we can see that the effects of the translation speed a little better in another one of the camera modes. I know some of the other camera modes support it. But I feel like the ball was probably traveling faster than we were. It kind of felt that way. I think that's what I suspect was happening there. Let's look. Kind of want to read the options for this. Probably is smoother. It's because it's not directly tied to the physics of the roll angle, the roll rotation in degrees to set the camera on the current camera. Roll the camera by 10 degrees over 1 second. Okay. I guess it's still attached. Is it still adjust the current camera roll over time? I'm assuming it's still attached to the player if I do that. Anyway, it doesn't let us play with the translation like we wanted to. If we have time, maybe we'll look at that one. Follow, orbit, or pan. Let's do pan. It's a pretty popular mode. So pan just has optional parameters, a pan camera options and the camera translation options, just like the others. So we'll rename this to, instead of attach options, we'll call this pan options. And which means we need to rename this to pan options. And pan options accepts a position offset and a translation speed. So we'll set both of these. Translation speed is already here, but let's do a position offset. And let's do a top-down view. So this is a vector. So we need to say new HZ vec3. And for top-down, we'll need to adjust the Y. So a 0 on the X, a 5 on the Y, and a 0 on the Z. So that should give us a direct top-down view. And we'll increase that translation speed we'll increase it to a 10. And so we don't need a target in this case, so I'll delete that target. But we are going to use pan options and our regular camera transition options that we've had the entire time. We'll rename this to pan person. We don't need a target anymore, so we can delete that. You can update the comments and the console log. Let's go up here. Go ahead and let Copilot create our connecting event. Let it create our network event. Save this script. Come back. Let it create our trigger reference. Let it connect to the trigger. And let it create our method for the server. All right, everything looks good. Thank you, Copilot, for saving us a bunch of time. Do a Control D, duplicate that, drag it over, rename this to pan camera. Make sure it has a reference. Wait, did I not name the trigger? No. Pan trigger. Go back to our server. Make sure it has a reference to pan camera. All right, and I did that all really quickly. I think I'm getting the hang of this now. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. Switch into pan. Now wait a second. That's not what I expected. And I don't know that the translation is, so I wonder why the behavior is different than I expected. Let's go back. If you actually know the answer in chat, feel free, because I'm exploring at this point. I don't think it has anything to do with the order in which these were placed, but just in case, I'm going to swap them anyway. That wouldn't make any sense, but you never know. Sometimes things that don't make sense or end up being true. I could eliminate, I don't think the transition time or anything has anything to do with it, but we could eliminate the camera transition options and just narrow it down to our pan camera options. And if I increase this, it should still increase our distance. Let's try these changes and see if it has any effect upon our experience there. I found that to be odd. It might have something to do with our transition times from our camera options. But I need you to get out of my way so I can hit play. Aha. Now we're in top down like I expected. Although the translation, I'm not really seeing. You think so? You want to, let's knock it down. Okay, so we see, I mean, we're pretty spot on, right? Let's see what happens if we do decrease it to a 1. How does that affect us? And if it don't affect us at all, maybe I'll leave the server and come back. I don't think there was any explanation. So controls how quickly the camera moves with the target it's attached to. If not set, the camera is always snapped to the position offset of the target. Okay. I mean, that's no extra instructions. What was he doing with his hands? Did you guys see that? I feel like that's weird though. So what does a 10 represent? Because we're definitely lagging behind my movements now that we switched it to a 1. Can we go less than a 1? Or if we make it really, really small? At this point, we're experimenting. I got through the bulk of the content that I wanted to show you guys today. But other than that, thanks for hanging out. Take care. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.